losers focus on winners, but winners focus on winning. But when you're focused on winning, and you're focused on your own race, so that's when you get to the finish line. But if you're constantly looking over your shoulder at the competition, then you never really get there.
You're like your own Garden of Eden, which means that there's nobody else that you're comparing to. And that space is available to every couple or to every person, that they can create their own Garden of Eden and their own private space. And that's a reflection of who they are. And that's what they compare it to. And so it's not to anybody else, but rather to the only beings that are there, which is themselves.
Welcome to another episode of Reconnect.
Ancient insights for thriving relationships.
I'm Menachem Lehrfield.
And I'm Sarah Lehrfield.
And this is Reconnect. Today, we want to tackle the topic of how to stop comparing yourself to others.
That's a tough one. Definitely something that I struggle with. I think a lot of people measure their worth based on the performance or success of others. And it's almost like how they set the bar for themselves is, well, if this person is capable of doing this, then that's a measure of my own ability to be successful. Our last episode, we talked a lot about relationships, and comparing is something natural that could happen in relationships. But we were talking about relationships with a relationship with self, and comparing yourself to others is one of those things that kind of takes you outside of yourself as opposed to really being internally connected to yourself.
I think that's so true. You just talk about like difficulty of it, because you notice we never really compare ourselves in totality to somebody else. We compare specifically the thing that we're struggling with, that we feel insecure about.
Totally.
And there's always going to be somebody that's better than us at something. And when we pick and choose and kind of curate the thing we're comparing ourselves to, it sets the bar so high we could never, ever achieve that.
Yeah. I mean, it's also not necessarily something that is worth it for you. It's interesting because I feel like it's almost like a fallout. It's like one of those relationships we talked about are necessary. Belonging is important. It's something that we need as human beings. And there's stuff that comes with relationships like friends or people we work with. And so a lot of times we compare ourselves, or there's competition with our neighbors or our people in our social circles or on a professional level. And so it's a gift to be a part of something. It's a gift to have that kind of connection. But the flip side of that is that sometimes we can lose our identity in the relationship. And thinking about other in a way that completely bypasses self.
Yeah, which is hard because we talked about the relationship with self. Like that's really where it starts and where it really lies.
Yeah.
There's this story Simon Sinek tells about how he did consulting work for both Microsoft and Apple. He went to Microsoft first, and then he was going to Apple afterwards. And he's sitting in a car being driven to the Apple headquarters. And he's there with one of the top executives. And he says to him, I was just at Microsoft, and they have this thing called the Microsoft Zune. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't even remember that being a thing.
Was it ever a thing?
Apparently.
Okay.
I don't think anybody remembers it, much less has one today. But he says to him, I tried out this Microsoft Zune, and it was amazing. It was such a remarkable product, and it was so much better than the iPod, and it does this and it does that. And the person he was talking to looked at him and just said, I have no doubt. And that was the end of the conversation. And he said, looking back at the two experiences, because when he presents at these conferences, he also sits in and listens to some of the sessions. He said at Microsoft, almost every session spent almost all the time talking about how they could beat Apple. He said Apple never mentioned Microsoft once. They didn't mention the competition at all. Their goal wasn't beating Microsoft. Their goal was, how can we help teachers teach? How can we help children learn? How can we create a sense of wonder?
So like being the best Apple.
Yeah. It was, how can we be the best at what we do? And I think that's one of the reasons why over the years, everyone who knows me knows I'm kind of an Apple guy. But even if I wasn't, there's a clear distinction between the Apple products. Forget about company market share and which one is stronger and better and greater. But you look at the obsession with which Apple fans love their products versus Microsoft. I think, and it's funny that I'm comparing the two when talking about not comparing, but, and it does sound a little funny.
Calling yourself out.
Yeah. But Apple time and time again doesn't look at the competition. They only look at themselves when they're competing. They're competing against their previous self, which is kind of like Hemingway said, true nobility is being superior to your former self. This idea of understanding that we shouldn't always be competing with other people, but with previous versions of ourselves. There's this great picture that someone captured. The Olympics are on our minds right now, but going back to the Rio Olympics, someone captured this phenomenal photo of Michael Phelps and Chad Lacrosse, where you see Michael Phelps, who ended up winning the race, the most decorated swimmer, I think, in history. And he's focusing with razor focus straight ahead. And Chad Lacrosse is looking at him and at Phelps. Mm-hmm. And this picture went viral and all over the world. And the caption that I say it a little bit differently I like personally like my version better. But I think the greatest caption of that photo is losers focus on winners, but winners focus on winning. When you're focused on winning and you're focused on yourself and you're focused on your own race, so that's when you get to the finish line. But if you're constantly looking over your shoulder at the competition, then you never really get there. It's like the Hasidic story of the man who came to the Rebbe and he was complaining about his business. And he said, I don't understand. Me and Yankel, we have the same types of stores. We're attracting similar customer bases. We are putting in the same amount of time, the same amount of hours. How come he always does so much better than I do? How come his store is so much more successful? And the Rebbe said, it's simple. He's only watching one store. Mm-hmm. You're watching two, right? If you're watching your store and his store, of course you're not going to be successful because you're so busy focused on his business. Focus on yourself. Yeah. Focus on your business, and things will take off. Yeah. When we compare ourselves to others, it makes us crazy. Speaking of the Olympics, there was this fascinating study after the 1992 Olympics where they compared the faces of the Olympians as they announced the medals. And what they found is that overall, the silver medalists seemed to be less happy than the bronze medalists. You'd think they did better. They'd be happier.
The bronze were just grateful to be there.
Basically.
They made it.
The bronze medalists, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld who said, of all the losers, you're number one.
Yeah.
Right? The bronze medalists were comparing themselves to the losers. So they were ecstatic. They were happy. At least they won something. Whereas the silver medalists were comparing themselves to the gold, especially in a lot of these races. It's a matter of like a fraction of a second. I almost could have been gold. I was almost there. So the silver winners, by focusing on and comparing themselves to the gold medalists, were unhappy.
But the bronze was also comparing himself, like a bronze medalist compares himself to other people that failed.
That's a good point. You're saying they're both really falling into the trap of comparison. And what's fascinating is that for one group of people, the comparison actually makes them happier. And the other group, the comparison is making them kind of miserable.
So maybe there's like information there.
Yeah. I wonder how maybe we're looking at this all wrong. Maybe comparison's not in and of itself bad. Maybe it's just the way we compare. If only there was a way that we can channel comparison to motivate us or to help us feel better about ourselves. Reality TV is a thing, right? People love reality TV. And one of the reasons why we love reality TV is it allows us to look at people whose lives are so much more messed up than ours. So no matter what we're doing, we turn on the TV and we look at a show, we see somebody whose life is so much more messed up than ours, someone who's struggling so much more than us. And that comparison does make us feel better about ourselves.
Or they have, more wealth, or they have like more success, or they have better skin.
That's also true. What I'm saying is when we watch trashy shows and compare ourselves to people whose lives are falling apart and it makes us feel better. I don't know if that's a good thing. Is it?
Is that ever scientifically proven?
I don't know.
That's why people do that?
I think at the beginning of reality TV, I remember seeing something like that. I don't know if that's still the case. Like even with game shows, and this sounds terrible to say, but one of the reasons why game shows were so successful, again, this is all going on in my mind. I'm not sure if this is true. I remember when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire came out, and what they realized was that there needs to be losers. People almost like, even though they don't verbalize it and consciously acknowledge it, and definitely won't admit it, but you kind of want to see the person lose. There's something about the excitement of the suspense of that moment and then them losing that makes you feel a little better about yourself, seeing someone down. I just don't know if that's a good thing. In any event, comparing ourselves can often lead to misery. It can lead to a feeling of inadequacy and not measuring up, and that can leave us feeling quite depressed. And at the same time, when our goal is trying to beat someone else, it robs us of playing our own game. Mm-hmm. It robs us of competing against our true opponent, which is ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard thing because we are social creatures and we are in relationships, as we said, and we're social animals. And as humans, we've always survived in groups and lived that way as well. And so it's almost like comparing yourself to others could be like a natural, instinctual way to survive, a way to matter, a way to figure out or see how you can play a part or ensure your position or your own safety. And the pitfall of that is that it really takes you out of yourself. I always love this idea from the Sheva Brachot that we say for a couple under the chuppah. We give them 7
That's the marriage
lessons.
canopy.
Yeah. And one of them is be very happy, beloved friends, like God's original creations, happy in the Garden of Eden. And it's very interesting because it doesn't say, it's not comparing this couple to Adam and Eve. It's not saying you should be like Adam and Eve, who were very happy. It's saying it doesn't really matter who it was, but rather what made them happy is the fact that they were in the Garden of Eden.
Which is so strange. It's like, what do I care about the location?
Right.
We should say, make this new couple like Adam and Eve.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
So
I never thought of that.
It mentions specifically the location or the space as opposed to the people, because this is an idea that relates to any person or any couple or any partnership. But more so, the focus is on what was the beauty of the Garden of Eden was that they were there and they were the only people that were there. And so almost like the messaging that we want to give to a couple is you're going to get married, you're going to evolve, you're going to grow, and you're going to try and become successful and connected and do things and build community and work on your marriage. And it's very, very easy to look out and see how everybody else is more successful, how everybody's kids seem to be doing better than yours, how every couple seems to be happier than you, how every couple has more success or money than you. And then you start comparing yourself, not just as an individual, but now also as like a couple to like everybody else. And that can be very detrimental to your relationship and to your own self-worth. And
That's so hard.
yeah. And so the message is that we want to bless you, that you should live in this space and work in this space and act and grow and be in this space as if it's just you, or this is just the two of you.
Like on an island.
Yeah, you're like your own Garden of Eden, which means that there's nobody else that you're comparing to. There's nothing else that you're looking. There's no one else there. Like that space held just Adam and Eve, nobody else. And that space is available to every couple or to every person, that they can create their own Garden of Eden and their own private space. And that's a reflection of who they are. And that's what they compare it to. And so it's not to anybody else, but rather to the only beings that are there, which is themselves.
Such a beautiful message. And it's not just that we compare ourselves like as a couple to people who seem to have it, we're doing it right or seem to be so happy or any of those things. We also like bring so much previous baggage into our marriage and into our relationships, where we're constantly comparing what our relationship looks like to our parents and the way we saw things growing up.
Yeah.
What our mother did and what our father did and how they interacted with each other and their roles and their responsibilities. And years that we've been married, 15 years now. And I feel like in a way we still kind of do that. Yeah. It's hard to get away from that mold and that comparison of, well, that's not the way it's supposed to be done.
Right.
It's supposed to be done this way. And that's all based on comparisons.
Yeah.
So that's such an incredible advice to give a new couple to try and start off. I could have really used that advice in the first 2-3 years of our marriage.
Yeah. It's not that they like manifested the Garden of Eden. It was literally their reality. And like, that's what we're saying, that your reality that you can create is that it is you and only you. It is you as a couple. It is you as an individual. And it's not about anybody else and how their success is, how they're doing in comparison to you.
Almost like just be happy with what you have and in what you have. And like almost learn to focus on that island, like you're saying, and not look outwardly to the rest of the world and all the other things that we can compare to, because there's always something else out there. There's always something else that we may think that we want, when it could be that what we need is right here. Jewish wisdom teaches us, Ezehu Asher, who is rich, who is wealthy, Hasameach bechalko, somebody who rejoices in his lot. And I always was troubled by that. It sounds like such a cop-out almost. It's like, just be okay with your lot. It's like, you don't have what you really want. You don't have what you need, but just be happy with it anyway. Almost like you get what you get and you don't get upset. But that's not really what the mission is saying.
Favorite line.
No, Jewish wisdom is not saying just be happy with what you get because you're stuck.
Thanks for you.
Right.
Yeah.
There's something so beautiful about this idea of someach bechelko. Bechelko literally means your chelik, your portion, your lot. But it means something so much deeper. What it means is that God handpicked your world, your reality, your island for you. God put you on that island, and everything on that island is exactly what you need. And it's not just what you need, it's what you need right now.
It's like the metaphorical toolbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see this someach bechelko, that's being happy with your lot, as a last resort, as like settling. And it's not at all what it is. It's really like these things were handpicked for you. There's this beautiful idea, although the way, just bear with me, we'll get there. It'll make a little more sense. It doesn't sound like it's coming from a very beautiful source. It's coming from the rebellion of Korach, which, by the way, talking about somebody who's constantly comparing to other people and feeling inadequate because of those comparisons.
Yeah.
So Korach was Moses' cousin in the desert, and he starts this rebellion against Moshe and Aaron because he feels like he was slighted and he didn't get the position that he deserved. And there's this almost crazy dialogue between Moses and Korach and God. And Moses basically says, if Korach is right, then fine. But if he's wrong, not only is he going to die, he's going to die in the strangest way possible. Like I said, bear with me. We'll get to the nice part. And the Torah, like the Jewish Bible, records how the earth literally opened up its mouth and swallowed Korach. But what was fascinating is it says it swallowed Korach and it swallowed all of his stuff also. And the question is, okay, I understand Korach was this evil person who's causing lots of strife and rebellion, and he deserved to die. Let's just say, whether we understand it or not, fine. But what about his stuff? It seems so wasteful. And why does his stuff need to get swallowed up also? Well, we understand that every single item I have, every single thing that I've been blessed with is a gift from the Almighty because I have a unique mission in this world. And because I have a unique mission in this world, I need those tools. And without those tools, I can't possibly fulfill my mission in this world. So when Korach was swallowed up, it was as if he was being erased, as if he was never here. And if he was erased, so then there's no purpose for his things.
Right, because Korach was trying to be Moshe. He was like never capable of being Korach.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Meaning even in his life, he wasn't being him. He was being someone else.
Right.
So if his whole mission, his whole purpose was being erased, then the items themselves don't need to be here. The whole concept of an inheritance, we call it a nahala, which literally means a flowing. It flows from one generation to the next. And the idea is that when a person leaves this world and they haven't yet fulfilled their full mission, they didn't finish the job, it goes on to the next generation as a way of continuing that mission. The reason why you get your parents' stuff after 120 is because you inherit their mission. And it's your job to use the things that your parents left you to continue their mission after they're no longer here. That's the idea of an inheritance. But whether we are parents or have parents, the messaging is still very clear, is that the things that we have aren't just things. I think one of the biggest tragedies of our current reality is that we allow ourselves to be defined as consumers. We don't even like bat an eyelash when people refer to us as consumers. Oh yeah, consumers say this, consumers say that. We as a society define ourselves by the fact that we consume things. But the truth is, everything we have, literally every single item that we've been given, that we've amassed, that we've been blessed with, is a tool. And it's a tool that allows us to reach our full potential as unique individuals. So when I look at somebody else and I see the tools that they have, and I feel a sense of jealousy, like, why does he have that car? Or why does he have that life or those vacations or that money, that house,
relationship,
or that relationship? He has that because he is playing a different game.
Right. You're not playing your own game. You're playing someone else's.
Yeah. And in that game, you need those tools. I don't have those tools because that's not my game.
Yeah.
Albert Einstein is attributed to have said, although it's pretty clear he didn't actually say it, but it's a well-known Albert Einstein quote that he didn't say, which is, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. If we go through life constantly looking over our shoulder at what everyone else has, then we're robbing ourselves of playing our own game because we have
literally not living your life.
Yes.
You're literally not living your life. I think about that a lot with Korach, that he just was trying so hard to be Moshe that he couldn't even be Korach. That's our reality when we compare. It's like we're trying so hard to live a life that isn't for us to live. And it just requires us to continue turning inward. A lot of times when I compare myself to others and see their success and wish it was mine, or see their abilities and wish I had them, a lot of times I remind myself to, like, I like kind of tap myself on the chest and I say, look here first, like look inward first, see what your abilities are before you start determining what you're supposed to be from an external place.
I love that. The blessing we give when we say Mazel Tov, I feel like everyone, Jewish or non-Jewish, knows the term Mazel Tov. And we think it means congratulations, but it's not what it means. It's the same word that we talked about. We talked about like Nachala is like a inheritance. It's nozel, which means also it's like a flowing. It's actually like a dripping almost, something that's nozel. When you say Mazel Tov, what you're saying is that your mazel, which is a hard word to describe, right? The zodiac way that the higher spiritual energy flows into this world should be done in a way that brings you to your purpose, right? That what that means is that your tools that you already have should be utilized for your purpose, for who you are, for your game.
That's what you're saying when you say Mazel Tov.
Yeah. Whenever I say Mazel Tov, it reminds me when our kids were really little and you had turned to Ozzy and Kelly about something. I don't know. They were 3 and 4 or 4 and 5. And you said, guys, come on, mommy's doing the best she can with the tools that she has. And then Ozzy turns to Racheli and says, don't worry, she doesn't have any tools.
I remember that. Okay, so let's just reiterate that because I think we use Mazel Tov, that concept, a lot. We say Mazel Tov to somebody who has a baby. We say Mazel Tov to somebody who graduates. We say Mazel Tov to somebody who gets a new job, who buys a home. What are we conveying to that person when we say Mazel Tov?
What we're conveying is the Almighty has blessed you with these gifts. And we hope and we pray and we give you a blessing that you should utilize those gifts or this new opportunity or this new beginning or this new chapter
to fulfill your
utilize it in a way that fulfills your purpose.
So it's almost like directing them to themselves, directing them to their path, to their life, and just saying like, focus on this, focus on what you have. It's like a little bit like messaging.
Yeah, it's because each person, and that's the thing, is each person has their unique mazel.
Yeah.
And that mazel is the thing that allows this, what we call shefa, this bounty, this blessing to flow. I'm not asking for someone else's. What I'm asking is that my mazel should be tov. It should be good. It should bring me to my purpose.
For me, like good for me.
Yes.
Mazel tov. It should be good for you.
Exactly.
Okay. So up until now, we've been discussing how comparing to others is unhealthy. It doesn't allow us to reach our own potential and play our own game, and that we are given the specific tools that we need in order to fulfill our purpose in this life. And so our goal is to continuously best ourselves and become a better version of ourselves. And we have what that takes in order to be able to do that. And that instead of looking outward and comparing ourselves to others, the idea is to direct more inward focus and look there first. See what you have, see what you were given, remind yourself of your mission, of your abilities, of your purpose with what you have. And that should be the determining factor of where you go from there or what you're supposed to do. And that redirection is very powerful. Is there anything beneficial about comparing yourselves to others? Like we said before, right? I mentioned before that it was a way of survival, right? If people were we used to exist in groups and live that way and survive that way. And so it was almost like you always had to make sure that you had a part in that group so that you could stay alive.
Right.
And so it was always
like knowing what your part is.
Yeah. And so it was always comparing yourself to another person to ensure that you had a position, to ensure that you had some sort of like safety or security or value in a group.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very beneficial for the evolution of humanity. How do we access the positive aspects of comparison? Are there positive aspects of comparison?
That's a really good question. I think with almost everything, there is positive and negatives. There's very few things that are inherently positive or negative. I think going back to kind of what we talked about before, which is a lot of times we see these things that we want to say are positive or negative, but really it's just information. And the question is, how are we using the information? You know, going back to our gold and our bronze medalists, right? If we use the information in a way that it inspires us and it helps us understand who we are and where we fit into the grand scheme of things and what we're capable of doing, and therefore helps us and propels us to become better, then I guess it's a good thing. If it
takes you out of yourself.
Yeah, maybe it does. But I think it brings you back to yourself. I guess that's the question is what is the piece?
Oh, I see. Like, meaning, could you compare yourself to somebody else and then say, I want to take that drive or that determination and apply it like, oh, wow, I'm so in awe of this person and their abilities. I don't have to do what they're doing, but they can inspire me to become a better version of myself.
I think so. There are certain areas of Jewish law that talk about unfair competition. And it says when it comes to, let's say, schools and teachers, these laws don't apply because there's this concept of kinaso from Torah v'chachma, that when academics or when your goal is to help people learn and grow, we want the competition. We want the jealousy because they're going to constantly try to outdo each other. But then the end result is a very positive one because it ends up making all the schools better. If there was only one school and there was no competition, it wouldn't do very well, right? But when there's multiple schools in a city and each school is trying to outdo the other, the end result is that the children get the best education. So maybe we have to just look at the end result. We have to look at what is it that we're trying to get at? And is this comparison going to help me reach that? Or is it going to make me feel bad about myself if we're...
Meaning we say, if it was a matter of survival, then it's something that we do naturally. We compare. And we've talked about the pitfalls of comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it is a neutral thing. And there could be positive benefits to it as long as we remember to bring it back to ourselves, meaning that you can look at someone else's determination or someone else's abilities and you can say, oh, how can I apply that to my personal life? There's something that I remember saying a lot as a kid growing up, and we said to our children a lot. It was like a mantra: we don't compete and we don't compare. And we stopped saying it because we felt like it wasn't in alignment with how we wanted to raise our kids, because the truth is that we do compare,
right?
And we do compete. And those are natural things. And those are
healthy
things. And they're things that can help us grow. And we just want to acknowledge that that's human. And so maybe we don't compete or we don't compare instead we compete and we compare and we try and bring it back to ourselves.
I guess. It's really that two-step process. It's, if I'm understanding what we're saying correctly, comparison is not inherently bad so long as I have a clear identity. I have a clear awareness of who I am, and I can be inspired by others as long as I keep on bringing it back into my version of that.
Yeah. Meaning it's information. That's information. That's telling you something. You see somebody else and you see what they're doing, and you're like, okay, that's information for me about how I could apply that to my life or my mazel.
And sometimes the comparison could just show me that that's not what I'm meant to be doing. There's an idea I talked a lot about in 0%, which is the other podcast I have, talking about the different stages of childhood and growing up from a child and becoming an adult. And one of the big transition points between childhood and #adulting is understanding who I am, what I'm good at, what I should be spending my time and my life doing. Mm-hmm. As a child, we see things, we watch a movie and whoever the main character is, like, that's who we want to be. We want to be the hero of the story. And a child really believes they could be an astronaut and a fireman and a police officer, and they're going to do all of those things, even though a lot of the things that they think and they hope and they dream they're going to be are mutually exclusive. They can't be all those things. Mm-hmm. But we would never tell a child you can't be that, because childhood is designed as this time period where I really, truly believe I can be and do anything. And I have this sense of limitlessness. Mm-hmm. And the reason why the Almighty gave us the gift of childhood is to allow us to experiment and to try all these different things and to see what sticks, right? If I was cautious and careful and I always only try the things that I'm good at, I wouldn't try a lot of things. And I wouldn't know what I'm good at because I would only do the things that I'm good at right away. I wouldn't put in the effort and put in the work. But by having this gift of childhood, I make all of these mistakes. And by doing that, I understand and I learn all the things that, maybe that's not really for me. And I do that through comparison. I compare myself to the people around me, to the people who are much better at those things than I am. And after I try and I see it's just not getting anywhere, there's some things that I can just say, and I know it sounds funny as somebody who's so into the growth mindset, but part of adulthood is recognizing, you know what? I may never be the best in the world at this particular thing.
And it doesn't mean you can't try it
100%.
play with it
Or even do it. If it's something that brings me joy and I enjoy doing it, then by all means, spend my life doing that.
But is that your
But that's probably not where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's probably not my life's mission.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if I have a tool that I'm not using, if I have a gift or a talent that I'm not using, then I am not fulfilling my mission in this world.
Yeah.
Because God would not have given me that talent or that skill if not for the fact that I have the ability and the responsibility to use it to make myself and the world a better place.
So it's like as you grow up and as you mature and as your prefrontal cortex starts to develop, you begin to like get more clarity on who you are, on what your character traits are, on what your strengths are. And that doesn't mean you can't continue to like, if there's areas that you want to, that are bring you joy or that you want to like test your limits and keep trying at, that's wonderful. But that's not necessarily the thing that's going to direct you to your ultimate mission in life.
Correct. That process that you described is one of my favorite ways that we see ancient Jewish wisdom and modern science converging, coming together. This concept of synaptic pruning, where we're literally just pulling apart and pulling all the things that we're not using, kind of get thrown away. And we do that in our teenage years. We do that as we transition from the limitlessness of childhood into the reality of adulthood. In those teenage years, we are literally pruning. I love that example of just all the things that I'm not really using. We just put them on the side. And that allows us to focus our energy on the things that will really allow us to become who we are, not who someone else is, not who all the other people around, but truly become me.
But you were saying that like there is an aspect of comparison in that.
Yeah. In that process, that pruning, the way I understand, am I good at something or not good at something? Often the best way to do that is by comparing myself to the people around me.
Yeah.
But I need
bringing it back to yourself.
Exactly. Bringing it back to myself.
Which I love this idea in this portion of ethics, where you mentioned Ezehu Asher Samech B'Chalko, who is rich, one who rejoices in his lot. That idea. A few verses before that, it says, who is wise, one who learns from every man. So it's not contradictory to look external from you and learn about yourself from other people, about the world from other people, to gain wisdom from other people. But it has to ultimately bring you back to your lot. It has to bring you to joy and success and happiness in your own lot. And if it's not doing that, then it's not a healthy comparison. But if it is doing that, then ultimately your comparison is really like learning about yourself from others.
Yeah. I love that. And I would say not just bringing it back, but also that's your starting point. But as long as you're starting with an awareness that you have been given gifts and talents because you have been given a mission that nobody else has, then I can look outwardly and learn from everybody else. And I can learn from everybody else. And then, like you said, bring that back.
I like that.
Okay. I think we're onto something.
Lots to think about.
Okay. So we'll put that out there for you to think about. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or rebuttals, feel free to reach out. You can find our information in the show notes. And we hope to see you back here next time. If you're enjoying this, please remember to subscribe and share with a friend. And don't forget to leave us a review so other people can find us as well. Until next time.
Bye.